Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. Some people fall apart, others disappear, and come back unrecognizable. Nobody really talks about that second group. The ones who didn't cry in public, didn't rage online, didn't plot revenge in the shadows, not because they felt nothing, but because they understood something early. Emotions are expensive, and time is non-refundable. While the world expects grief, anger, and drama to arrive in a predictable order, a few people quietly skip the entire emotional parade and go straight to work. Here's a fact that rarely gets airtime. Psychological studies consistently show that prolonged rumination, replaying pain, betrayal, and loss, extends emotional suffering far longer than the original event itself. In plain words, most people don't suffer because of what happened. They suffer because they keep rerunning it like a bad movie with no skip button. Meanwhile, a smaller, sharper group closes the tab entirely. No dramatic exit, no announcement. Just a shift so sudden, it confuses everyone who thought they had front row seats to the downfall. That's where this story begins, because legend isn't born from loud recovery arcs or motivational speeches shouted into mirrors. It's built in the unglamorous middle, when you realize revenge is a full-time job that pays nothing, anger ages you faster than stress, and grief, if unmanaged, starts charging rent in your head. Some people choose to process every emotion publicly. Others choose efficiency. And yes, it looks suspiciously like emotional cheating, skipping straight past suffering and landing on clarity. There's even a little humor in it. The same people who expected you to crash are now watching you upgrade in real time, wondering if they missed an episode. You didn't become cold. You became selective. You didn't suppress emotions. You compressed them into focus. And while everyone else was busy narrating their pain, you were busy editing your future. This isn't about being heartless. It's about being precise. It's about understanding that some transformations don't come with noise, tears, or applause. They arrive quietly, fully formed, and slightly inconvenient for anyone who needed you broken to feel comfortable. This is what happens when you skip grief, anger, and revenge, and go straight to legend. Number 1. You refuse to turn pain into a personality. Most people don't realize when it happens. Something hurts them deeply, and slowly that moment becomes the headline of their life. Every opinion, every reaction, every story traces back to that wound. Pain stops being something they experienced and turns into something they are. You didn't let that happen. You understood that pain can explain a chapter, but it should never be allowed to author the whole book. You felt it? Yes. You didn't pretend it didn't matter, but you also didn't milk it for sympathy, validation, or identity. You didn't introduce yourself to the world through what broke you. That choice alone put you on a different path. Because once pain becomes a personality, growth feels like betrayal. Healing feels like losing relevance. People stay hurt because being hurt becomes the only version of themselves they know how to perform. You chose differently. You treated pain like a message, not a lifestyle. You listened to what it was trying to teach you. Then you let it go quiet. That's rare. It takes self-respect to stop talking about what wounded you and start building something that outgrows it. It takes discipline to resist the attention that comes from being visibly damaged. There's comfort in being understood as the one who was wronged. You walked away from that comfort. What makes this powerful is that you didn't rush to prove anything. You didn't overcorrect. You didn't become bitter or hard for show. You simply stopped letting old damage decide your tone, your choices, and your future. You refused to rehearse the story every day until it felt permanent. Instead, you moved on before the wound could claim ownership of your voice. People noticed the shift, even if they couldn't explain it. You stopped reacting the way someone hurt would react. You stopped filtering everything through resentment. And quietly, without speeches or drama, you reclaimed yourself. Not as someone who survived something, but as someone who moved past it without turning it into their brand. That's the difference between carrying pain and being carried by it. And you never let it carry you. Number 2. You understood that emotions are phases, not destinations. Most people think emotions are permanent. They get angry and assume they'll always be angry. They grieve and convince themselves that grief is their life now. They rejoice and believe happiness has to last forever. You didn't fall into that trap. You understood something everyone else struggles to accept. Emotions visit. They don't move in. They are signals, not identities. They are moments, not maps. When grief hit, you let it exist, but you didn't let it dictate your schedule. When anger flared, you acknowledged it, but you didn't let it shape your words or chain your decisions. People around you might have expected outbursts, rants, or melodrama, but you didn't give them a show. You treated emotions like temporary weather, not permanent architecture. The world around you can be chaotic, unfair, and messy, but your inner life didn't have to be a hostage to whatever storm was passing through. This is a rare skill, because the default is to overstay in feelings. Most people anchor themselves to anger, bitterness, or sadness because it feels familiar. It becomes a crutch, a story they tell themselves repeatedly. You refused that shortcut. You accepted that feelings have power, but power is meant to inform action, not define existence. Each emotion you experienced became a tool, a signal, a compass pointing to what needed attention or change. You learned to ride the wave without drowning in it. The quiet genius of this approach is that it makes you unpredictable in a world addicted to reaction. People assume you'll follow the usual emotional script, but you skip the drama. You don't linger in sadness to earn sympathy. You don't hold on to rage to feel alive. You process, adjust, and continue. Life throws pain, betrayal, and frustration at everyone, but very few manage to see them as passing currents rather than permanent fixtures. By understanding emotions as phases, you unlocked freedom. You chose movement over stagnation, clarity over chaos, and control over spectacle. You didn't erase feelings, but you didn't let them erase you. You didn't live in your emotions. You used them, learned from them, and moved forward. That's the kind of mastery most people never even notice, let alone achieve. Number 3. You realized revenge keeps you tied to the past. Revenge is seductive. It promises satisfaction, closure, and a sense of justice. It whispers that if you can just make someone feel the weight of what they did to you, the story will finally be complete. Most people fall for it, dragging it into every conversation, every thought, every decision. They rehearse it, plan it, obsess over it, and in doing so, they chain themselves to the very moment they're desperate to escape. You didn't. You understood that revenge isn't liberation, it's a leash. Holding on to the idea of payback keeps you living in someone else's timeline. It forces you to replay the hurt on a loop, giving power to the person who wronged you long after they've moved on. Every angry thought, every imagined retaliation, every whispered grudge is another day spent under the authority of the past. It's exhausting, invisible, and corrosive. Most people mistake this exhaustion for resilience, but it's really just bondage disguised as purpose. You chose differently. You didn't suppress anger, and you didn't pretend the hurt didn't matter. You acknowledged it, understood it, and then refused to let it dictate your next move. Revenge wasn't the goal. Freedom was. You realized that the best way to win isn't to hurt them, it's to outgrow them, to evolve past their capacity to affect you. While others were busy plotting, you were busy creating. You turned energy that could have fed obsession into something that built momentum, skill, and impact. The brilliance of this choice is subtle but undeniable. People who expect you to remain bitter or reactive are caught off guard when you've already moved miles ahead. Your calm isn't weakness, it's power. Your success doesn't need justification, and your peace doesn't need explanation. By refusing to indulge revenge, you reclaimed your timeline, your thoughts, and your life. The past lost its claim over you, and you became unstoppable, not through retribution, but through refusal to be tethered. You learned that revenge doesn't change the story. Letting go rewrites it entirely, and that is far more legendary than any act of retaliation could ever be. Number 4. You chose growth over emotional theatrics. Most people react to pain with performance. They cry in the open, rant in social media posts, or make sure everyone knows exactly how wronged they feel. It's the human default to dramatize, to seek validation, to turn suffering into a show. You didn't do that. You saw the noise for what it was: distraction. You understood that the world doesn't need your breakdown, your life needs your breakthrough. You chose growth over the applause that comes from emotional theatrics. Choosing growth means making decisions that aren't always visible or exciting. It means showing up every day to do the quiet, sometimes boring work that actually changes you. While others were busy narrating their pain, you were analyzing it, learning from it, and turning it into strategy. Anger became awareness. Grief became a guide. Disappointment became a blueprint. You didn't need anyone to see the process, because the results would speak louder than any performance ever could. This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about prioritizing outcomes over optics. Emotional theatrics are tempting because they offer immediate attention and sympathy, but they're addictive in all the wrong ways. They chain you to the moment of suffering, turning a temporary setback into a permanent role. Growth is slower. It's invisible at first. It requires patience, discipline, and a willingness to sit in discomfort without dramatizing it. But it compounds over time, creating strength that no one can argue with or undermine. The quiet power of this choice is almost unfair. People who expected you to crumble are left confused when you rise. Those who assumed you would react impulsively can't anticipate your moves. By prioritizing growth, you've gained control over your narrative. You've invested in yourself in a way that is permanent, not performative. Choosing growth over emotional theatrics is the moment when suffering stops being a story told for attention and starts becoming fuel for transformation. That shift separates the average from the legendary. You didn't just survive, you evolved silently, deliberately, and irreversibly. Number 5. You learned that healing doesn't always look soft. Healing is usually pictured as gentle. People talk about finding peace, embracing calm, and smiling through recovery. That's the version everyone likes to show, the Instagram-friendly kind of healing that fits into neat stories. You discovered something entirely different. Real healing is often hard, disciplined, and ruthless. It doesn't wait for the world to be kind. It doesn't ask for applause. It looks like hard choices, quiet distance, and the willingness to face yourself without excuses. You didn't wrap your pain in a soft blanket and call it recovery. You confronted it, dissected it, and used it as a tool to become stronger. You didn't let emotions dictate your actions or define your value. You didn't sugarcoat betrayal or loss. Instead, you treated each wound like a lesson, a blueprint for better judgment, sharper instincts, and a more unshakable self. That kind of healing is messy. It doesn't come with comforting affirmations. It comes with the kind of honesty that makes other people uncomfortable because they can see how deliberate you've become, how uncompromising you are with yourself. Healing in this sense isn't passive. It's a full-time job where you show up for yourself even when no one notices. It requires setting boundaries that might feel harsh, cutting ties that feel cruel, and building habits that feel unnatural at first. The process demands persistence, focus, and a willingness to be alone in your own mind for long stretches. The reward isn't immediate sympathy or validation. It's clarity, resilience, and a kind of quiet power that the world can't take away. The real truth is that softness often invites relapse. Comfort can lull you into accepting less than you deserve. You refused that. Your healing became armor, not decoration. It prepared you to move forward with precision and strength, not with a fragile sense of hope. People who see you now might mistake your calm for ease, but they don't know the effort, discipline, and quiet ferocity it took to get here. That's the kind of healing that doesn't just fix you. It transforms you into someone who can never be shaken in the same way again. Number 6. You accepted that no one was coming to save you. Most people live with a quiet hope that someone, somewhere, will step in and fix what's broken. They wait for an apology, a rescue, or a miracle. They assume the world owes them justice, clarity, or relief. You didn't. You looked at your circumstances and realized that no cavalry was on the way, no hero would appear, and no external force could undo what had already happened. And instead of panicking, collapsing, or blaming fate, you used that truth as a launch pad. Accepting that no one was coming doesn't make life easier. It forces brutal responsibility. Every choice, every action, every step forward rests entirely on your shoulders. There's no one to shield you from the fallout, no one to validate your pain, and no one to hand you answers. It's terrifying at first, but in that terror lies a hidden power. When you stop expecting someone else to save you, you start noticing your own strength. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop outsourcing courage. You realize that you are more capable than you ever imagined because you have to be. This realization changes how you approach everything. Problems are no longer abstract crises. They become challenges with solutions, and solutions depend on your clarity, creativity, and commitment. Waiting for someone else to intervene is slow, unreliable, and ultimately a trap. Taking ownership of your life, on the other hand, is immediate, empowering, and irreversible. You discovered that independence isn't just freedom, it's dominance. By refusing to rely on anyone, you carved a space where nothing could stall your progress, no delay could weaken your resolve, and no expectation could distract you from what truly mattered. The quiet irony is that people who were supposed to save you eventually notice the change. They see someone who didn't break, didn't plead, didn't linger in despair. You became unshakable, not because someone lifted you, but because you lifted yourself. Accepting that no one was coming to save you didn't leave you abandoned. It left you fully armed with your own resilience, self-reliance, and a silent power that no one else could ever grant. Number 7. You stopped demanding closure from people who benefited from confusion. Closure is a word people love to toss around, but in reality, it's rarely found in the hands of those who hurt you. Most people spend years chasing explanations, apologies, or neat endings from the very individuals who caused the chaos. It's exhausting, and more often than not, pointless. You saw this clearly and chose to stop asking for what could never be honestly given. You stopped expecting people who thrived on confusion, betrayal, or indifference to suddenly act with integrity. This doesn't mean you ignored the past or pretended nothing happened. It means you recognize that closure is not a gift other people hand out. It's something you create for yourself. While others remain trapped, waiting for someone else to acknowledge wrongdoing, you took the power back. You realized that demanding validation or explanations keeps you anchored to the people who don't deserve your attention. It's like holding a leash for someone who already ran away with your energy. By letting go of the expectation, you removed them from the equation entirely. The shift is subtle, but profound. You no longer replayed conversations, dissected every slight, or begged for understanding. You stopped giving mental space to those who had no intention of being accountable. Every ounce of focus that once went into chasing closure now fueled self-mastery, ambition, and strategy. You learned to replace resentment with observation and dependence with independence. By refusing to demand closure, you rewrote the rules. You became the authority of your own story. There's a quiet power in this choice that other people notice but can't always articulate. Those who cause the chaos may still hope for your reaction, but you've moved beyond it. You're no longer reacting, you're acting. You've transformed a cycle of frustration into a path of clarity, control, and momentum. Closure is no longer something that belongs to anyone else. It belongs entirely to you. And in that reclamation, you became untouchable, unbothered, and unmistakably ahead. Number 8. You turned injustice into strategy, not outrage. Most people react to being wronged with noise, shouting, complaining, venting to anyone who will listen. It feels satisfying in the moment, but it rarely changes anything. You didn't take that route. You recognized early on that outrage is loud but powerless, while strategy is silent but unstoppable. You turned every slight, betrayal, and injustice into information, a blueprint for your next move, rather than fuel for pointless fury. When someone crossed you or undermined you, you didn't waste time narrating your suffering. You observed. You noted patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities. You studied the landscape of conflict instead of getting lost in it. That kind of approach demands patience, restraint, and a refusal to be provoked. It's uncomfortable because it asks you to delay immediate satisfaction in favor of long-term advantage. But it's also the only way to take what could have been a setback and turn it into leverage. This isn't about being cold or unfeeling. It's about being intelligent with your energy. Outrage is messy. It drains focus, clouds judgment, and broadcasts vulnerability. Strategy is calculated. It amplifies impact, maximizes results, and keeps your position unassailable. While others are still reacting, you are already moving. You are already building. You are already preparing a future where past injustices no longer have any power over you. The brilliance of this method is in its subtlety. People who expected a reaction are often blindsided by your calm. They don't realize that while they were performing, you were constructing. They don't see that your silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. Every action you take becomes a statement without needing to scream it aloud. You've converted the frustration that traps most people into fuel that elevates you, giving you an edge they can't comprehend. Turning injustice into strategy is a mastery few achieve because it requires foresight, self-control, and discipline. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. And in that quiet, deliberate approach, you become untouchable, unstoppable, and inevitably ahead of anyone still caught in the trap of outrage. Number 9. You let the old version of you die without a funeral. Most people cling to who they were, even when that version no longer serves them. They carry outdated habits, old grudges, and the same limiting thoughts, pretending that growth can happen while still holding on. You didn't do that. You allowed the old version of yourself to die completely, quietly, and without ceremony. No announcements, no dramatic goodbyes, just a deliberate decision to leave behind everything that couldn't move with you into the next stage of your life. Letting go like this is brutal because it forces you to confront yourself with unflinching honesty. You had to acknowledge your mistakes, weaknesses, and blind spots, not as excuses, not as stories to garner sympathy, but as the raw material for transformation. Anything that kept you small, stuck, or reactive was sacrificed. You didn't preserve comfort, you preserved growth. That's the difference between survival and evolution. Survival clings to what's familiar. Evolution demolishes it and builds something stronger in its place. The power of this choice is invisible to most people. but it's unmistakable in its results. While others are still negotiating with who they used to be, you are already operating as someone completely new. Your energy, decisions, and vision are no longer fragmented by the past. You don't carry old grudges or outdated fears into the present. You've stripped away the unnecessary weight, leaving only what matters: clarity, purpose, and relentless forward motion. This kind of transformation isn't flashy. It doesn't announce itself with spectacle or social media updates. It's quiet, internal, and relentless. But the effect is undeniable. People notice the shift without fully understanding it. They see someone who moves differently, thinks differently, reacts differently. You've become a version of yourself so refined that the old one seems like a distant stranger, irrelevant and powerless. Letting the old you die without a funeral is the ultimate act of self-respect. It signals that you value growth over comfort, evolution over nostalgia, and power over pity. By doing this, you didn't just survive your past. You outgrew it entirely, creating space for a future no one could have predicted but you. Number 10. You understood that being misunderstood is the price of becoming rare. Most people fear being misunderstood. They bend, explain, justify, and overshare in a desperate attempt to fit into someone else's narrative of them. You didn't. You realized early that the rarer someone becomes, the more their actions, intentions, and presence will be misread. People aren't equipped to follow the logic of someone who refuses to conform, and that's not a flaw. It's a sign that you're moving ahead while the rest are still trying to categorize you. Being misunderstood isn't a setback, it's a filter. It separates those who react emotionally from those who observe with curiosity. It exposes who is capable of respecting your boundaries and who is addicted to drama. Most people panic when someone doesn't fit neatly into the story they expect. You embraced it. You understood that clarity isn't owed, explanation isn't mandatory, and approval is irrelevant. Rare people don't exist to be explained. They exist to operate at a level others can't yet reach. This understanding allowed you to stop performing for validation. You no longer needed to justify your decisions, actions, or silence to anyone who couldn't comprehend your vision. Misunderstanding became your ally because it gave you the space to move without interference. While others were busy questioning motives, misinterpreting intentions, or trying to pull you into their mental models, you were already building momentum. You didn't chase comprehension, you chased impact. The irony is that people who misunderstand you often admire or fear you without realizing it. They project their assumptions, and in doing so, they reveal more about themselves than about you. Meanwhile, you remain untethered by their perceptions, free to act with precision and discretion. Misunderstanding is the price of being exceptional, but it's a price worth paying. By accepting it, you became unstoppable. You stopped shrinking to fit into someone else's understanding, stopped compromising for comfort, and stopped explaining your brilliance to those unwilling to see it. In that space, rare isn't just a label, it's a reality. You became someone who can't be neatly defined, predicted, or contained, and that is the exact power that legends are built on. Number 11. You replaced emotional reactions with long-term thinking. Most people live in the moment when it comes to conflict, pain, or betrayal. They react first and think later, letting anger, frustration, or hurt dictate their next move. You didn't. You made a deliberate choice to step back, observe, and consider the long game. Instead of being controlled by what made you flare up in the moment, you asked yourself what decision would benefit you months, years, or even decades down the line. That shift transformed everything. Replacing emotional reactions with long-term thinking isn't easy. Emotions are fast, instinctive, and loud. They demand attention, shout for immediate justice, and offer quick relief in exchange for long-term consequences. Most people fall for the trap because it feels productive at first. Venting anger, lashing out, or proving a point gives the illusion of control. You saw through it. You realized that reacting in the heat of emotion is like spending money you don't have on a problem you can't solve. It's temporary satisfaction with permanent cost. Instead, you treated every situation like a chessboard. Every insult, betrayal, or setback became an opportunity to position yourself strategically. You calculated consequences, anticipated reactions, and aligned your actions with the life you were building rather than the immediate chaos around you. Patience became your superpower. You let others exhaust themselves with impulsive behavior while you quietly mapped your path forward. The result is almost invisible to outsiders, but it's devastating in its effectiveness. People expect you to respond the way everyone else does, but your moves are deliberate, precise, and disproportionate to their assumptions. You're not reactive. You're intentional. You don't trade power for temporary relief, and you don't sacrifice the future for the satisfaction of the present. By replacing emotional reactions with long-term thinking, you gained something most people never do: control over your life, your narrative, and your destiny. You didn't just survive situations, you leveraged them, elevated yourself above the chaos, and became untouchable in ways that only patience, discipline, and foresight can achieve. This is the quiet genius that separates those who merely endure from those who ascend. Number 12. You realized peace is a competitive advantage. Most people think peace is passive. They picture meditation, gentle walks, or avoiding conflict as signs of weakness. You understood something most miss entirely. Peace is not a surrender. It's power. It's the silent edge that separates those who react blindly from those who control outcomes. While others scramble, panic, or lash out, you move with clarity, focus, and precision. That stillness isn't emptiness, it's leverage. Being at peace in a chaotic world means you don't let external events dictate your state of mind. People around you may rage, gossip, or manipulate, but you aren't a participant in their noise. You hold the calm, and that calm lets you see opportunities, anticipate moves, and act with strategy, while everyone else is exhausted by their own reactions. Peace gives you time others spend on anger. It gives you clarity they waste on drama. It turns patience into a weapon. What makes this rare is that peace in action isn't soft or easy. It requires discipline, emotional intelligence, and sometimes ruthless boundaries. You can't stay serene if you allow every slight betrayal or setback to touch you. You must choose what deserves your energy, what deserves attention, and what is irrelevant. That choice is a skill most people never cultivate. They mistake busyness and reactivity for strength. You know the real strength lies in measured response, calm observation, and deliberate action. The beauty of peace as an advantage is that it's invisible until it manifests in results. People who underestimate you do so at their own risk. They think calm means weak. They think patience means indecision. By the time they realize the truth, you're already ahead. Your decisions sharper, your actions cleaner, your influence uncontested. Peace isn't just emotional comfort. It's tactical superiority. It's a quiet engine that powers focus, resilience, and strategic wins in a world addicted to chaos. You didn't just survive turmoil. You used it to prove that calm isn't surrender. It's dominance disguised as serenity, and anyone who misunderstands it ends up playing catch-up forever. Number 13. You built something so solid that your past became irrelevant. Most people carry their past like a backpack filled with stones. Every mistake, betrayal, or regret weighs them down, and they think they have to constantly explain, apologize, or fix it. You didn't. You decided to stop negotiating with the past entirely. You focused on building a foundation so strong, so unshakable, that what came before no longer mattered. Your history didn't define you. Your actions and creations did. Building something solid isn't glamorous. It requires relentless focus, discipline, and the ability to ignore distractions. While others were busy debating who wronged them or obsessing over what went wrong, you were quietly stacking bricks of skill, knowledge, and influence. Every hour spent on self-improvement, every calculated risk, every disciplined habit became a part of the structure that would eventually make the past irrelevant. The world doesn't notice foundations at first, it notices results. And when the results arrive, people stop caring about history. They only see impact. This approach demands patience and foresight. You can't rush solidity. It takes time for effort to compound into something immovable. Most people quit halfway, frustrated or distracted by the noise around them. You didn't. You treated setbacks as raw material and criticism as feedback, not as reasons to stall. Every challenge became another opportunity to reinforce what you were building, making your future stronger than your past could ever threaten. The power of this choice is subtle but undeniable. By the time the world catches up, the person who once seemed vulnerable or incomplete is now untouchable. Past mistakes, betrayals, or chaos no longer have leverage over you. They're irrelevant footnotes in a story defined by growth and achievement. You didn't erase the past, you outbuilt it. Building something so solid that your past became irrelevant isn't about luck or talent. It's about consistency, clarity, and the refusal to let yesterday dictate your tomorrow. That's how ordinary people get left behind, while legends move forward without anyone able to tether them to what once was. Number 14. You became undeniable without needing to be dramatic. Most people believe they have to be loud, flashy, or performative to prove their worth. They shout, argue, or stage their struggles in public, hoping to be seen, recognized, or feared. You didn't follow that script. You understood that real power, influence, and respect don't come from spectacle. They come from consistency, results, and presence. You became undeniable quietly, subtly, and in a way that leaves people stunned without ever needing to announce yourself. Being undeniable without drama requires mastery over your own mind. You can't be distracted by attention or validation. You can't allow ego to dictate your actions. Instead, you focus on what matters, what you can control, what moves you forward, and what builds the life and identity you want. While others were performing for applause, you were producing results. You let your work, your decisions, and your calm confidence speak louder than any outburst ever could. The beauty of this approach is that it creates discomfort in others. People are wired to react to noise, not quiet authority. When someone is undeniable without drama, they disrupt expectations. They operate on a level that can't be measured by conventional metrics like popularity, attention, or influence, because their presence alone demands recognition. You don't need to explain yourself, justify your actions, or seek approval. People notice you because you exist fully in your power. This isn't arrogance, it's precision, it's discipline. It's the ability to act with purpose while remaining unshaken by chaos, criticism, or curiosity. It's the rare skill of moving through the world untethered by external validation and untouchable by the opinions of those who expected you to perform according to their standards. Becoming undeniable without drama is the final step in the journey of transformation. It's the moment when all the pain, growth, patience, and discipline coalesce into a presence that cannot be ignored. You don't need noise to prove you matter. You don't need chaos to prove you're strong. You simply exist in a way that commands respect, demands recognition, and makes the world acknowledge that you've moved past ordinary, straight into legend. The journey from pain to legend isn't about noise, revenge, or public displays of strength. It's about mastery over your emotions, your choices, and your time. You refuse to let pain define you, understanding that grief, anger, and betrayal are temporary phases, not permanent identities. You turned setbacks into strategy, disappointment into discipline, and chaos into clarity. Every move you made was deliberate, every action designed to elevate you above the ordinary. You let the old versions of yourself die quietly, refused to demand closure from those who thrived on confusion, and built a life so solid that the past became irrelevant. Along the way, you realized that patience, calm, and long-term thinking aren't weaknesses. They are competitive advantages that separate the average from the unstoppable. You became undeniable without drama, untethered by expectations, and unshakable in your purpose. The truth is simple but profound. Legend isn't born from spectacle. It is forged in the quiet, disciplined choices that most people overlook, in the internal victories that go unseen, and in the relentless refusal to be defined by what hurt you or what others think of you. By skipping the predictable cycles of grief, anger, and revenge, and moving straight to action, strategy, and self-mastery, you didn't just survive. You evolved into someone who commands attention, respect, and influence without ever needing to prove it. Your transformation proves that true power is subtle, unstoppable, and deeply rooted. It's not in who shouts the loudest or who reacts the fastest. It's in who builds, endures, and rises beyond expectation. And that is the difference between being remembered and becoming legendary. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that cut straight to the truth. Like, comment, and share this video to let others see how skipping the noise and moving straight to mastery can change everything. Your next step toward becoming unstoppable starts now. Stay awakened, chosen ones.